This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Brandon Andrus Green.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast Live. Today I have the pleasure of introducing your good neighbor, Representative Stan May. Stan has spent more than 30 years serving with the Tulsa Fire Department before continuing his public service in the Oklahoma House of Representatives, where he represents House District 80. He's also a proud husband, father, and grandfather. Stan, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing today?
Doing so well. I'm excited to hear more about what you have going on. It looks like you'd already spent a full career in the fire department. I'm so curious, how did that transition work? At what point did you like, I want to run for office?
That's not how that worked. Several of my friends on the fire department decided they wanted somebody representing them in the state capitol, and they decided I was going to run. And they did a good job of it. They did a good job of campaigning. I didn't think they could pull it off, but they did.
Wow. So not only did they nominate you, but they also handled your campaign.
Yes, they walked me through that whole thing. They did a great job. And now we've got several firefighters and police officers serving in the legislature. So, and it has helped. It's helped with, the biggest things we couldn't get passed. Now we're getting them passed. We've got a bigger vote, a bigger voice down there.
What was going on in the first place? What was going on behind the scenes that the fire department was like, man, we need a rep?
Oh, you've got retiree issues, health issues. There's several things that happen during your career and after your career, and they didn't feel like they were getting a fair shake, that their message wasn't being heard. And if you're not listening, you're going to make poor decisions. So they wanted to make sure everybody was listening to what was really happening.
What would you say is more dangerous, working in the fire department or working as a representative for the state of Oklahoma?
Personally, it's probably as a representative, but the fire department, it's a different danger. As a representative, you can say the wrong thing at almost any time. So you have to watch
Yeah,
yourself.
and I'm curious how that even works behind the scenes. So what were you most surprised about once you actually won and moved from campaigning for the job to actually doing it? How did that transition work?
The year I got elected, we had, out of the 101 House members, there were 35 new people came in. It was a big change down at the Capitol. People were upset over the teachers, the school situation, several things at the state of Oklahoma that the common citizen, they were fed up with. So there was a big change. So I wasn't the only new one there. And I found out that, you don't always get your way. Sometimes you have to vote for something to get somebody to vote for something of yours. That's what you're never going to find, something that 100% of the people want. So that's the trick, is balancing those things and make sure that anything that you have to accept to get what you want is not more detrimental than what you're getting or what you had. But yeah, it's
And how long have you been a representative now?
8 years.
8 years. And what's it like day to day actually being a representative for the House?
Well, for 4 months, you're down at the Capitol 4 days a week. So you either have to drive every day or find a place to stay down there. And that's kind of disruptive. I wouldn't wish that on anybody that had young kids at the house. It's it just ruins your consistency there. But mine were gone. I've got grandkids, so I had that leeway to be able to go down there. Now, once session's over, after that 4 months is over, it's not too bad during the summer. And then as you get closer to November, December, things start ramping up. That's when you start looking at legislation. People start sending you ideas, and lot more, it starts to really ramp up pretty fast. And by January, you're back to pretty much every day.
And how does it work with the committees? Do you just get to choose your own committee? How many committees are you on? Will you tell me a little bit about that?
The committees are chosen, leadership and whatever party's in control, they'll assign you different positions, leadership positions, committees. Of course, I was in a lot of public safety committees just because of my background. And then as the years have gone by and you gain trust with some of those people, you start moving up. For the last 4 years, I've been chairman of the Republican caucus, which sounds easy, but it's to get 80 people to agree on anything is pretty tough. So, and my job there was not to create policy. It was to make sure that everybody had their voice heard in our Republican meetings so that we could present a good face when we went out before the people and represented our constituents. And that was pretty challenging, actually.
And how do you go about getting 80 people to actually agree on stuff? Is that just a lot of coffee and donuts, or how does that even work?
No, I don't deal with individuals hardly at all with that position. That's my job, is to run the meeting and make sure that everybody gets their voice heard. So you've got to be just as short with your best friend as you are with somebody you don't really value their opinion, but you have to give them their say and make sure that they get the time they need to voice that. And that's the difficult part. Even though you may want to hear more from one legislator more than the other, you can't buy into that. If you're going to get everybody to buy in, you've got to treat them all fairly, and that's the hard part.
I'm sure you have a lot of issues come across your desk. Have there been some issues that you've encountered that kind of matter to you most personally?
The public safety things, of course, always catch my attention. There's a lot more to that than just, it sounds easy, public safety, but you've got everything from police to fire to EMS, rural, urban, well-funded departments, people that can't get money for anything and have to volunteer and spend their own money. So there's a lot of issues, and that does take up a lot of my time. But once I was down here for a while, and I've got grandkids now, I've started seeing how society affects not only your kids, but your grandkids. And so I've been kind of migrating towards those issues here in the last few years.
What have you learned about taking a real problem in the community and turning it into something the government can actually address?
That's a trial and error thing early on. Somebody, or you come up with an idea, or one of your constituents, a friend comes up with an idea, and you start working on that, and you write up some language, and then we have lawyers that take a look at it and they'll come back with their opinion. No, that's not constitutional. That'll never work. You need to word it this way. It's a pretty steep learning curve those first couple of years, but once you start seeing where the direction everything's going on every subject, you can avoid a lot of those pitfalls, and you can shorten up that time it takes to write legislation.
So I love some of the wisdom that you've gained. From where you sit, what should Oklahoma families, business owners, community leaders, what do you feel like we should be paying closer attention to?
Right now, it's the internet and AI that's what's causing most of our problems, our family problems. It's not what's causing every problem, but it was easier, I think, to shield your family from a lot of influence years ago, when I was growing up, than it is now. I mean, everything is right there at their fingertips. And it doesn't matter what the subject is, or whether it's moral or immoral, they can get to it. And there's almost no way to prevent that. So we need to start paying attention to how we're going to govern AI, and we're going to have to start governing the internet a little bit. I'm not saying that we're going to stomp on the freedom of speech, but I do feel like a parent has a right to decide what his or her children have access to on a daily basis when they're not there. So it's fine line, but I think we're going to have to deal with it.
Is that stuff that's actively being discussed behind the scenes? Because I know that it's like a weapons race with the AI. It's just changing everything so rapidly. I would think that everyone would have an opinion on it one way or another.
Oh yeah, it's talked about every day. Every time you see something on the news or something hits you wrong, it immediately goes to the internet and AI and how are we gonna adjust this to where we can live with it? Um, yeah, it's discussed quite often.
And knowing what you know now, what advice would you give just an ordinary person who's wanting to make, let's say, a meaningful difference, but doesn't have, let's say a fancy title or political experience or really even connections? Where do they start?
Uh, you start with your city officials and move up and your state officials, and you're paying for those federal representatives also. So you shouldn't be afraid to voice your opinion, whether that's write an email or make a phone call. When you see them out in public, have those discussions. What's important to you? Uh, that's who they represent. They represent you. I mean, they're working for you. So some of them don't act like it, but in the back of their mind, they understand that every time they do something, it could cost them votes. And so,
I've
yeah, my
always,
advice is get involved and say something.
because you feel like those voices matter. From my perspective, it would be hard for me to just reach out by like email or call the various representatives. In my mind, I would think that they're just too busy. They don't even care what I have to say. But as a representative, do you feel like it's actually different behind the scenes?
It's a little different than everybody thinks it is. Uh, the chances of you having that one great idea and you're the only one that's ever thought about it and the only one that feels that way, that's pretty slim. When you start seeing emails and notes come across your desk, there's going to be a theme over a few weeks of what's important to the people of Oklahoma, and also to Bixby and this part of the Broken Arrow, and I also have a little bit of Union. So you see what's important to them because there'll be a cluster of ideas, and they're gonna be pretty close, or the subject's going to be close. They're going to be from one end of the spectrum to the other. So you have to take the time to go through those.
I would imagine working in the fire department for 30 years, you've seen and heard your list of like tragic stories. Do you feel like that it's more heart-wrenching to be in the fire department dealing with all of that, or actually behind the scenes working with politics?
Politics is definitely harder. I mean, as a public safety official, you solve the problems that you can solve right then. You mitigate that situation, and then you're headed back to the station and on to the next one. You don't have to stick with one thing for weeks and weeks at a time. And with politics, it's not like that. When somebody's child gets in trouble or is hurt or is being abused somehow, that doesn't go away. Those people are still there the next morning when you wake up, and you still have to deal with those same complaints. And like I said, it's never one person. Very seldom is it ever one person. It's a problem that is, well, much wider than I would have ever thought it was on almost every instance.
And what advice would you give a young person or an adult that was actually considering uh, taking the same path, like actually trying to run for office or anything like that?
Education is important at anything you do. Make sure you've got your education taken care of, and I know it sounds hard, but you practice listening to people. Just because you're the one that's running to represent those people doesn't mean that you get to tell them what to think. You have to actually listen and and figure out not only what they need, but what they want, what they just, what they desire to make their lives better. So yeah, that's what you got to practice, that active listening thing. That's pretty important when you're in politics.
And is there one thing that our listeners, that you would like for our listeners to really remember? Any gold nuggets of wisdom you can share with these upcoming generations?
Uh, Everything you do and say affects somebody. So as you start voicing your opinion on certain subjects, you need to stop and think about how many different segments of society that one statement can affect. I mean, the tribal issues in the state are huge. Okay, I'm not a tribal member, but my grandson, granddaughter are. So now I have to take into consideration, well, how's this going to make their lives better or worse? And as compared to the other grandchildren, I can't, there's just a lot of things you gotta look at. How's it going to affect your citizens, your constituents, the ones that pay you to be there day in and day out?
Well, Stan, I really appreciate you giving us an honest look at the path into public office and what that work is really like, and the advice that you shared, you've learned along the way. It means a lot.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for your encouragement along the way on some other issues too. So it helps. It does help. So
Thank you. I sure appreciate. Yeah, and in full transparency, you've actually helped me previously with some bills. I was one of those individuals that first came into your office at the Capitol, requesting help with an anti-trafficking bill, that you ended up helping me champion, and we were able to get passed unanimously in both, for the Republicans and the Democrats. So I really appreciate your help in the anti-trafficking movement, and just all your personal support.
yeah, and we're not done with that work. It's just, but that was a subject that I knew went on. You see it on TV, you hear about it, but until somebody sits in that seat and starts telling you what's really going on in your district, it makes a huge impact. So I've got to stop and think, what if that was my grandchild or my child? So makes a huge difference when you speak up. So
Thank you, Representative Stan Mayer. I so appreciate you, and I wish you the best moving forward.
thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnptulsa.com. That's gnptulsa.com, or call 918-301-6356.